So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today for the launch of our report on the state of harassment and discrimination in the Nigerian workplace. This has been a labor of love. I've been doing this work since 2007, and I only really started doing the research in 2017, actually collating the research and actively seeking research. So today we're about to launch our report, which will be freely available to all of you and your organizations. And we're hoping that collectively we'll be able to work towards making our workplaces better for all of us. My name is Habiba Balogun. I'm the researcher. I'm an organization effectiveness consultant, a certified trainer, coach, team facilitator, a neuro-linguistic programming practitioner, and a social justice activist. I've been a diversity champion for very many years, designing intercultural awareness programs, helping minority groups, different minority underrepresented ethnic groups, women's career development programs, which we delivered nationwide, as well as helping organizations establish their diversity policies, which would include, of course, bullying, harassment, discrimination. For some organizations, they add intimidation into the mix. I've also produced some local context-specific training content, because when you start training in diversity, you'll find out that most of the visual aids, the videos are all cited in the Western world. So through this research, I've collated different testimonies, different scenarios, and produced our own content from our own scenarios, our own situations in Nigeria. And I'll be sharing some of that content with you today. So welcome once again. And it's lovely to see some of our former HBC staff here. Hello. Hi, Bukola, Momi, Yuande. You're all very welcome. Lovely to see you all here. So what we're going to do is, I'm just going to run through the presentation of the research findings very, very quickly. And then we'll open the floor and we'll unmute you so that you're free to unmute and make your contributions and ask your questions. And hopefully ask for the research, because you're going to do something with it. So I'm going to start with the genesis, how it all started. And then I'll show you the face of exclusion. What does it really look like? That is something that came out loud and clear when we were doing our research. People just don't understand what it is. What does it look like? Okay, I know harassment, but when is something harassment? When is it not harassment? So we're going to show you what it looks like, the face of exclusion. And then our statistics, which frankly are shocking. It's much worse than we thought it was. And we'll listen to some testimonies that we've converted to film. And I'll share our recommendations, steps you can take to address these situations, steps you can take to redress the context for all of us. And then we'll close with appreciation and our question and answer. So the genesis, who we are, who is HBC, and how did all of this start? Well, HBC is an organization effectiveness consulting firm. We do HR consulting, training, diversity management, a whole lot of things, executive coaching, and we've done it in many industries, in all sectors, public sector, private sector, and development sector. You can see here, we have a lot of clients, a lot of multinational clients, a lot of small Nigerian organizations doing big business, seeking to institutionalize, and then development sector, business associations, chambers of commerce, who needed to learn how to advocate, how to fundraise. So we've got a lot of different types of clients. And this is what drives us as an institution, as an organization. We want to be, it's all about performance improvement. So when people ask me, what do you do? I might say I'm an organization effectiveness consultant, or I might just say I work in the field of performance improvement. And I do that with individuals, with teams, and with organizations. And what was really important when it comes to this research is that our mission is to change lives. That's actually our mission, to change lives. How? By helping organizations improve their performance via best practice in organization development and in-depth knowledge of our HR environment. So it's to change lives, make the workplace a more conducive, more productive, more profitable place, help owner managers be less stressed because they can delegate to their staff, and their staff will step up and do the job. And well, these are our core values: effectiveness, customer satisfaction, professionalism, and respect. So we found out when we're working with various clients, and as I said, we have had clients in the public sector, private sector, and development sector. We found out that something kept coming up again and again and again. And that something was harassment and discrimination. If people will say, we can't keep our best staff, they leave. We train them and they leave. Our staff are not performing well. I pay them well, I give them pension, I give them healthcare, they have leave allowance, and yet they're not performing. And what we found out is that the recurring decimal in all of these cases is harassment and discrimination. The workplaces, those work environments can be hostile. And in a hostile work environment, not everyone, in fact, very few people can thrive in a hostile work environment. It's hostile, right? It's doing everything to make your working day unpleasant. There's places with bullying and blame culture, places where harassment is rampant. They use harassment instead of supervision. So they think in order to supervise well, in order to supervise closely, I need to harass my subordinates. There's intimidation from wherever there's a power dynamic. It could be the security guard intimidating the cleaners. It could be the managing director intimidating his general manager, okay? Intimidation, sexual harassment. And I can tell you that in our research, there's no organization that did not have sexual harassment. Across all the different sectors, they had sexual harassment. Discrimination, the same thing. And one of the reasons it's so important to do the research here is because even though discrimination happens all over the world, what is it that people use to discriminate against here? It was important for us to really understand, to identify what it is and understand. And then retaliation was rife. If someone complains about or reports about being harassed or bullied, there's retaliation. If someone speaks to the boss that, please sir, please ma, you know, I don't like the way you spoke to me, there's retaliation. There's a lot of threatening of job loss. And then there's victimization. You refuse a sexual advance, the next thing you know, your performance appraisal goes from outstanding to fair or to poor. Or the next thing you know, you're getting a letter, a sack letter, we no longer need your services. So this is a real barrier. That's what many organizations, many employers don't understand. Harassment and discrimination is a barrier, one of the recurring barriers to retaining talent, the people you want to keep, and to high performance from your workforce. So you need to do something about it. And the business case has been established, well established. I'll share a bit with you about that. So what did we discover? When we were looking into harassment and discrimination in Nigeria, there's very little data available. So we thought, well, let's generate the data that ourselves. And when we engage with people, and when I say engage with people, I'm talking mostly in the formal sector. I'm talking about people who are educated with degrees and master's degrees, some of them with PhDs. There's a gap of understanding. There's a gap in understanding. They really don't understand what constitutes consent. What is, when does, you know, when does chasing after someone for performance or correcting them for underperformance, when does that become bullying and harassment? When does friendly advances in the workplace become sexual harassment? What is discrimination? I don't discriminate, but I would never hire a man to be a nurse for a nursing position in my organization. I would never hire a woman for a logistics position in my organization. And if there's a young person who has all the qualifications and experience for the job, for a managerial job, but the person is 25, I would never hire that person. That's much too young. So they don't even realize when they are discriminating. And then we consulted some experts, Dr. Abiola Akiode Afolabi and Mr. Michael Dugeri, and looked at what's the legal framework, what are the legal protections, and found out that the one act that employers really rely upon, our labor laws, don't directly address these issues. If not for the strides taken by the National Industrial Court, Order 14, laws passed by states like Lagos State Criminal Law, And now the most recent laws that were passed against sexual harassment in tertiary institutions, the Violence Against People's Act. If not for those, we're really left without any protections. So we're talking about harassment and discrimination in the workplace. So the law, the overarching law that governs the workplace, has to directly address these issues. Now, they don't. Something surprising, even though we have some landmark cases in Nigeria, since 2012, 2013, we've had cases of people getting compensation of between 2 million naira and 13 million naira, 30 million naira, compensation for victimization in their workplaces on issues of sexual harassment, on issues of verbal abuse and bullying, okay, on issues of encouraging all kinds of things. We have landmark cases. Organizations are not aware that they have this risk, that they are open to liability if they don't put measures in place to govern that. And then most Nigerian employees feel, well, I don't have any recourse. If I'm harassed in my workplace and I report it to HR, or I report it to my manager and they don't do anything about it, I have to live with it. They don't realize that there are options for them, even legal options available to them. So there's a lot of ignorance that we really need to counter. And I'd like to say thank you to resources who shared very freely of their expertise. And finally, culture. Culture, they say culture trumps strategy any day. Nigerian culture traditionally tolerates these behaviors that fall into this bracket of harassment and discrimination from people in authority, whether it's our parents, our school teachers, our religious leaders, is tolerated in our communities. And therefore it has also come into our workplaces. And that is something that we need to do something about. Global research has documented and quantified the cost to organizations of all these inappropriate workplace behaviors. If you have a hostile work environment, if you have a work environment where there's harassment and discrimination, you can tally how much it's costing you, additional cost from absenteeism, your staff are not there when they should be there working. Presenteeism, your staff are there physically, but they're not doing any work, their minds are somewhere else. Employee turnover, every time you have to recruit a new member of staff, you're paying recruitment fees to a recruiter. Then it takes them maybe 3 months to 6 months to really understand the role, their job, okay? So that's time they're learning instead of being productive. All kinds of things, all these things affect your bottom line. And then there are the impacts that we're seeing now since the last 2 mental health impacts, occupational health. You get more lost time incidents in these kinds of work environments. And then reputation risks, because now with one tweet, somebody saying, oh, I was harassed in my so-and-so company. I reported to HR, they didn't do anything. I reported to my bosses and they told me the person is too valuable, they can't let it go. You just get Twitter account, your corporate Twitter account will just be flooded and your reputation will be damaged. People you want to attract to your place will not want to work there. So there are significant risks from harassment and discrimination. The business case has been established. So if you don't know what the business case is, I'll be happy to engage with you later, or you can just do some research. The business case has been established. So these were our research objectives. We wanted to find out what is the scope of it, harassment and discrimination in Nigeria. We wanted to document what we find, determine how common it is, how rampant it is, and what types, okay? Make sure that there's a source of data and evidence. So we couldn't find anything. So we want that when other people are looking, they will find something. We want to provide data and evidence for human resource practitioners, trainers, advocates, policymakers to draw on. And then we wanted to understand the employee experience, because again, we have a culture that values resilience. So you have many people who've been through many things. They've been through some terrible situations at work, and they've just lived with it. They've moved on. You know, when you speak to them and you talk about harassment, discrimination, they'll say, oh yes, my first job, this is what I confront, this is what I had to deal with. In my third job, this is what I had to deal with. So what is the employee experience? For those who have reported, very few, okay, only 11 to 12% of people who are harassed or bullied or discriminated against report, very few numbers. But of that 11%, how were those cases handled? For the remaining 88% who did not report, but reported to us in our research that yes, they have suffered harassment, discrimination, what prevented you from reporting? And on the flip side, what would enable you to feel confident about reporting? So we wanted to make sure that the research brought that out as well. We want organizations to be more open about it. As we said, we found from our findings, all workplaces have harassment and discrimination in one form or another happening there. But when you want to engage with companies, a lot of them might be cagey about it, almost putting their head in the sand, closing their eyes to it, which is part of the problem. So we want to encourage more organizations to be open. If you're open about it, you can actually address the issue. And we're providing help and advice, some recommendations, things, very simple things that you can do, don't have to spend a lot of money, and share the business case for you to take up to your board and your management team